Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. We're coming off of a bye week, and so we're going to sit down and talk about where we're at as far as how we feel about the team, and if we still think we're a playoff team, if we're kind of mailing it in a little bit, or how enthusiastic are we going forward? We get some key pieces back this week, and we're in play for a big piece to come in from outside the team. We'll talk about all of that. Hey, Keith.
Yep. I actually come on. This is a bye week, good time for a bye week, both to get people healthy, including, probably the most important piece on the Seahawks. But also it was a good week to have a bye because everything else turned out screwy. This was one of the weirdest weeks in the NFL that we'll see. Just upset after upset and games that just didn't make any sense. But
a lot of games that helped the Seahawks.
Yeah,
which was kind of crazy.
I was, you look at Dallas getting blown out by Denver. Let's just start there. Dallas had looked like they were right there with Green Bay and Arizona and the Rams and Tampa as one of the true contenders, and then they just got blown out by a fairly middling Denver team that just traded away its best defensive player. It was just a very weird game. And it was like that across the NFL. I mean, you have the Bills, which are probably the best team in the AFC, getting beat 9-6 by the Jaguars.
That was extraordinary. I love that outcome. And it was just one of those things where, unusual. It kind of puts things in this week kind of helped put things in perspective as far as how the Seahawks played for the first 8 weeks, because, we faced some tough teams and we played some teams pretty well that ended up going on and making life difficult for other teams that are in contention as well. Let's talk about the games that directly affected the Seahawks. The Falcons 4-4 beat the Saints 5-3. The Falcons are still one game ahead of us in the wild card hunt, but the weaker of those two teams, the Saints being the stronger team, likely probably finish ahead of Seattle for that number 6 spot overall. But to have them go down is pretty interesting. Ravens beat the Vikings. The Vikings are now 3-5, which I think really helps the Seahawks the most out of this list, because the Vikings and the Seahawks, I think in the end, we're probably going to be really close, like neck and neck with the final record.
And the Vikings have the tiebreaker over Seattle because of their win.
Exactly.
So having them lose a couple of games, along the way that maybe they thought they were going to win, just gives Seattle an opportunity, because they have to finish a full game better because of that tiebreaker situation. So getting them to 3-5 now, if Seattle goes on a run, it puts them in position to jump the Vikings and get into the playoffs.
Patriots beat the Panthers, so the Panthers are now 4-5. That'll have an impact down the road.
Yeah, and they're looking. They are looking like they're falling apart. The Panthers are. So they're a team that we're watching, but
right.
It's hard to see them, getting in a position to maintain a playoff run.
So the Eagles fall to the Chargers. Now the Eagles are 3-6. The Cardinals beat the 49ers. The 49ers are 3-5. The Steelers beat the Bears. The Bears are now 3-6. So everything that could have gone right for Seattle in the bye week happened. And all those teams that I mentioned that lost became weakened, and Seattle didn't have to play. And just by virtue of not playing, kind of strengthened themselves. And then you've got Russell Wilson coming back. It's going to be a tough game this week, but with Russell Wilson back, Eskridge is coming back. Chris Carson's going to be practicing on Wednesday. So
Eskridge has been out for that with that concussion for a while.
Since week 1.
So yeah, has it really been that long?
Yeah.
It'll be good to have him back, on the field and whatnot. I just hope that, I know that they sent him to, get some special, eye tracking training and stuff to help with his symptoms, and hopefully that worked. And anytime a concussion has that long of a recovery, it always just makes me worry for the person, right? Because, it's great they're out there for our entertainment and they're putting their bodies on the line, but their brains, that's serious, right? That's you don't want to see guys that have brain damage later. So I'm worried, but at the same time, if he's cleared and is out there playing, he's an exciting player. I'm glad to have him out there, but it's still worrisome.
So Keith, what do you make? Well, first of all, Chris Carson, to have him back now, the same sort of situation. You worry about a player's long-term health. Obviously we're all worried about that neck injury that Chris has. The fact that he's going to be on the practice field, what do you make of that?
Well, it shows that he's, he's recovering. I mean, a neck injury can be a lot of different things. Usually what happens is it's a stinger, which means a nerve's compressed. And so an arm kind of goes numb and they lose, some of the strength and stuff in the arm until the nerve regenerates. And okay, I mean that's kind of stuff that happens,
or it gets decompressed, and maybe that's what happened. He got some treatment and it released, and now he's better.
Yeah, and so usually that's what that is. But at the same time, it could be something like what happened to Cam Chancellor and Cliff Averill, where for them it was career ending. So anytime it's a neck, you're always worried. And again, both for the team, with the player, but also for the player and their long-term health. And so seeing him back on the field, that's a good sign. That shows that whatever it wasn't too serious, and he's starting to get himself ready to come off the disabled list and get back on the field. And quite frankly, the team needs him.
So here's a topic that I've just been dying to talk to you about since all of this kind of emerged. Odell Beckham Jr. cleared waivers as of 4 p.m. Eastern time today. So he officially became a free agent, can sign with any team, but reports have been out tying him to being amenable to coming to the Seahawks. Seahawks in turn have been elusive in saying whether or not he's on their radar. I mean, Pete Carroll basically did come out and say, he's part of our conversation. We'll see what happens. He was very, Pete Carroll-ish in that way, but he didn't come out and deny for sure.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the potential of adding the player now that he's cleared waivers? His $7.5 million salary is gone. Any team that signs him can sign him to any deal that they negotiate. I would imagine, based on the fact that he eliminated his last 2 years and so forth, that he may want a viable second year option in any new contract that he signed. So I would imagine it'd be like a 3-year deal, with the third year being kind of a toss away.
I don't know. The thing is that what are the teams that have the cap space to sign
now
him?
A lot more teams do, because you can manipulate that contract in this year. You've got 9 games left. You could almost theoretically make it almost nothing with guarantees. I don't know if any team's going to give him that money now. It might be sign it, rebuild your value, because every single team had the ability to claim him off waivers and pay him that $7 million salary, and not a single team wanted it. So that'll give you a little bit of an idea of where he's valued. And so being able to get him in, the other part is that there's no offsets in the contract language. And so, getting him to being a free agent, he's going to get paid his salary for this year, because it was
it was guaranteed. And then whatever he makes on a new team is extra.
Yes.
So the Browns are paying Odell Beckham to play for someone else. And so whatever he gets from another team is going to be extra. So he's going to pick the team that gives him a chance to showcase some talent and be good. So that way he hits the open market in the offseason when everyone has all of their spending availability available, and he can go get the biggest deal.
So what is the advantage of him signing with Seattle? And then what are the disadvantages, both from his perspective and ours?
Okay. So the advantage of him signing with Seattle from his point of view is you got Russell Wilson, who's one of the best deep ball throwers. You got a really explosive offense. You've got the offense that was the number one offense in, yards per play, points per drive. With the when Wilson was in there before the injury, but now he's going to be back. So there's a lot of potential there for Odell Beckham to go put up big numbers. And that's what he's going to want to do. He's going to want to put up big numbers. Plus, he's not coming into a situation where he's going to be the only guy. Like it's easier to be great when you've got DK Metcalf over there
taking some pressure off of you,
pulling double teams and occupying both the corner and a safety on every single play.
It's going to be helpful to Lockett as well. I mean, really, three-headed monster is what we'll be talking about here. Now, why would the Seahawks not want to do this deal, Keith?
The only thing that I would think of is you look at when was the last time he was a great player. When was the last time he really, really was a dominant player? And that's probably his last year in New York. He's never been great in Cleveland, and it's been a while. And maybe if the team's he's coming in feeling like he is an elite receiver, but if the team feels he no longer has the elite skills, well, then you're just bringing in a problem. Right, you're bringing in an attitude. You're bringing in that, and so the team might not want to do that. But I don't know if the team views him that way, and I don't honestly believe that's kind of a fair assessment. I just know that statistically, he hasn't been as good since he got to Cleveland.
So we saw what happened last year. How does this compare to like what Tampa Bay did with was it Brown?
Mm-hmm.
Antonio Brown. How do
very similar.
So attitude wise from the player, skill position wise, and what Russell Wilson might like are all kind of in that same bucket, you think? And so does the team make a different choice this year?
I don't know. I know that with Antonio Brown, there was a lot of concern. He had worn out his welcome multiple times with multiple teams in that same year. And so there was, and the offense was at the time was totally clicking. It was afterward that things kind of fell apart for the offense. So there wasn't to feel like that there was a need. So now they're in a position where, I mean, do they need Odell Beckham? No. I mean, like I said, they still had the number one before Wilson got hurt, they had the number one offense in the league. But
we're one injury away in that position group from being really underperforming.
Yeah, because there's no depth. You've got if Eskridge plays, you've got four guys at the position who.
But I would rather have Odell Beckham Jr. than Penny Hart being that fourth guy.
Oh, I was Freddie Swain being the fourth guy.
Well, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, right.
But Penny Hart's the fifth guy. I mean, he's getting meaningful snaps and getting nothing from it because he's just not that good of a player. But when you have a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. who can come in and be, I mean, this is a guy who has legit top, like number one receiver skills. Like he was genuinely thought of as one of the top 5 receivers in the entire league.
People aren't going to like this either, but this could very well be a hedge against a very large, substantial DK Metcalf situation starting next year when DK is going to want to get paid a year before his contract is up.
And he should get paid.
He should get paid.
Yep.
But he could make life difficult for the Seahawks if Seattle doesn't have any leverage. And this would give them a little bit of leverage.
Yeah, I mean, true, but
I'm just saying that, teams think about this stuff.
They do, and I think with certain players they don't. You walk in with a guy like Metcalf, and you go,
"What do you want?"
He's going to be
truck.
Right. What was Megatron's last deal? Let's start there. Because the salary cap's gone up and salaries have gone up and all of that. So
you're anticipating like a 5-year, $22 million a year average type deal for a DK Metcalf, like top wide receiver money in the NFL.
He's going to get,
If it's not us, it's somebody else.
Someone will pay him. And the thing is,
he's so young.
It's people will look at the stats and they're like, well, his stats are good, but they're not they're not like super great. And no, go watch.
There are certain offenses where he would be a monster. That is true.
Double teamed and triple teamed.
But he would also physically pay for it as well, and his career might be shorter. So he's got to balance all that out.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have Russell Wilson throwing to me, but yeah.
Yep.
So okay. So what's your final thought?
I would say one thing that you mentioned that I haven't really addressed yet is keeping Russell Wilson happy. Russell talks about wanting more weapons and that kind of stuff, and you have an opportunity to not give up any draft capital, and for that matter, that much in the way of cap space. I don't think it's going to cost you much to sign him. It's more about the situation.
Do you think you could do that deal for the 9 remaining games at probably what, 4, 3, 3.5? Are we talking like that?
It's going to be closer to the league minimum. Because you remember, he's getting paid by the Browns.
Right. As long as perception versus reality doesn't get in his way.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what happens. That's what Antonio Brown did. Is he signed for next to nothing.
Do you think that's what Seattle's going to point to as like a contract example?
Yeah.
I do too, and I'm not sure it's going to work the same, but it should be tried.
You can look at a lot of examples. These mid-season. Look at Harrison last year. Not just receivers, but just.
I get the idea though of the rehab situation. You want to go into a situation, if you're Odell Beckham Jr., into an ideal situation where you can rehab that image. Mm-hmm. You're not going to make a huge impact because you're going to come into an offense that's pretty well set. Rotations are set. Targets are, comfortable as far as Wilson is concerned. But if you can, remaining 9 games, if you can get like 25 receptions for 350 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, that's a large impact. Plus be completely primed and ready to go in the playoffs and have a larger impact. That would be an ideal situation for Beckham, especially if it comes from Russell Wilson. I mean, I like the idea. I think that Seattle should probably do everything it can to get in there, but now they're competing with everyone else. If you're saying that it's a league minimum deal, I'm saying it's probably going to be maybe double the league minimum deal. Right, in that ballpark.
That's still right. $1.5 million. It's right. The idea that he's going to sign for 7, I think, is just not going to happen.
What the reality though now, with that said, is that Seattle's now competing with 20 teams as opposed to being one of 4 or 5 that had cap space if we picked him up on waivers.
I don't know if that's true either.
So,
because I don't think he's competing. They're competing with 20 teams.
Okay, say he's competing with 10 playoff contending teams, then they all want him. The question then becomes, who really has an opportunity to get him?
You look around the league, and if I'm him, the teams I'm considering is Seattle and the Rams, mostly.
And Green Bay, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no.
And according to Scheffler, understand that he's got Green Bay on his short list.
Yeah, Green Bay would be but really,
well, we don't like to talk about them right now.
The Rams just, they just jettisoned Jackson, who was their deep threat, the guy who had the speed to take the top off the defense. Jackson was unhappy with his role and the lack of targets.
And they just went out and got Von Miller. Man, you make another Von Miller signing only on the offensive side of the ball. Yep. Just make a statement to your like brand new all pro level playing quarterback, that we're going to go get this thing. And this is our time right now. That would be the statement. And that would be a win-win for both player and team.
And when you saw what happened to the offense without Jackson, right? They really struggled to move the ball consistently in this last game. And so I could see them going heavy after them. Green Bay would be another one. Beckham's not a guy. He's played for the Giants and the Browns. He's not going to shy away from the bad weather and playing in that, all of that. So, yeah, I mean, those are the teams. Seattle's going to be in there in the mix too because of Russell Wilson. And there's just not, I mean, I'm not, as Odell Beckham, he's not going to the Titans who have Ryan Tannehill, or the Saints
don't have a quarterback now.
Yeah. Who are quarterback less, or a bunch of other teams, right? You're not going to a team like the Raiders or whatnot. It might be the Cowboys. Like that might be a team that he would consider. But
would
then
he end up going to like the Atlanta Falcons with Matt Ryan throwing the ball, lost Julio Jones in the offseason?
No, because even though
they're sit at 4-4.
Even though they're sitting at 4-4 and they're kind of, they've played a couple of good games recently, they're still viewed as a team that's beginning a rebuild. And I don't see that being a great fit. And so, yeah, it's really just, it's the teams that are with good offenses that are playoff contending. And so, yeah,
it is interesting that we put Seattle in that bucket sitting at 3-5, but we've got Russell Wilson coming back. Everything's kind of lining up for Seattle to make a run if they can get past these next 2 games. But I wanted to share something with you that kind of gives me some hope. And we talked last week about hope and where the team's at. And are we truly playoff contenders? Are we going to make a run? Will we make a run? All of those questions. And I kind of tried to sell you on the idea that, yeah, Seattle's going to make a run. I didn't say will, might, could have, would have, should have. I'm saying Russell Wilson's coming back. We're going to make a run.
Well, yeah. And you texted me over the weekend and we're like, Seahawks are going 8-1 down the stretch.
That's pretty damn optimistic.
I think it's extremely optimistic, but and my response was, all right, prove it. We got a show. So,
right. Well, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to prove it, but I'm going to give you some hope and maybe let you make your own decision on whether you're going to buy or you're going to sell on that idea. But one thing I'll point to is Seattle right now, including all of the games, not just the last 4, not just the last 6, all of the games that we've played so far. Seattle's defense ranks 4th in the NFL, allowing 18 points per game. So there. That's why I'm optimistic.
And they've done that against a really tough schedule.
Yeah. Pretty darn tough with some great offenses, and our offense hasn't really helped them very much because we've been inconsistent. We haven't converted on third downs as best as we can. Russell Wilson's been out for 3 weeks, etc. I mean, just a lot of stuff.
And sometimes the Seahawks just score too quickly. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for defense to rest when Wilson's out there throwing dimes and having touchdown drives that are under a minute.
And we can talk about all the other stats that you can attribute to a defense, but really the bottom line is points allowed. And so Seattle's doing pretty well. They're doing well enough to where they should be winning games just on their defense.
Yeah,
because the defense is doing so well. So if you have a competent
it's weird
offense,
thinking about that because the defense looked so abysmal early.
Yeah. And it's 2 years in a row that they tried the same strategy, and I'm not exactly sure what to attribute that to. I think it's Pete Carroll. They tried to overcomplicate this thing. They had the same basic personnel in both years, but they tried to just do too much. They asked players to trust each other when there really wasn't enough trust yet. And so they brought the defense back to 0 on the spectrum of negative and positive numbers. It's just It's even. Everybody kind of starts from scratch, and that enabled the team to kind of build some trust and build some confidence and get players put in a position to where they're not out of position, where they're put in a position to be successful. So that's the defensive component that I'm thinking, okay, that gives me enough hope where the defense is not necessarily solved, but it's competent. It's enough given where I think the offense is going to go. So now you take the offense that's kind of been struggling a little bit. Last week was awesome. But now Russell Wilson's back. You got Eskridge coming back that gives you a little bit of an inside threat, a little bit of speed and open space.
Maybe get Chris Carson back on the
Chris Carson back. You get Russell Wilson obviously back. That comes with a whole attitude kind of shift, more of a dominant shift. So you have an offense that's kind of squeaking along a little bit, not dictating terms per se, but just kind of taking what the defense gives them a little bit, goes down the field, scores, maybe doesn't score. Now you've got an offense that's like alpha. They're going to go get theirs. They know what they want to do. You haven't yet seen complete utilization of the tight ends, but the tight end group is solid. I think that, he comes into play. Collins has been having a pretty decent year. Now he gets to maybe resume a role as a backup, which I think he would thrive in. Being a featured back is hard. I mean, he makes it work because he works so hard at it, but being that second guy, I think is a nice tempo shift for him. And a guy that works just as hard at getting yards as Carson does. So that's a nice 1-2 punch, I think. And Seattle really hasn't seen that together to be able to sustain drives and so forth. They've been working, Carson's here, Collins is here. They're not together. So that would be nice to see.
And it's so frustrating that we're talking about the 1-2 punch in their backs being Carson and Collins, and Rashad Penny is just an afterthought. At most.
Yeah. And he didn't look great at all in the last outing. But you know what? If he's there, terrible. I don't even know if he suits, but if he does, to have that as an option out there where he doesn't have to be featured, he can maybe sneak up on somebody and get something in the open field. I think if they're going to use a guy like Rashad Penny, I think they would be wise to try to get him in open space in a screen type situation, a screen game, get him way outside so he can kind of make a one-cut situation and go. Inside runner, I don't have any confidence in him at all. He just
not right now. I mean, he's got in his college tape. He has the vision. He's got the power. He's got everything that you'd want to do that. But watching him now after the injuries as a pro, he does not look comfortable. He was very tentative coming up to the line of scrimmage, and is getting tackled at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he had 7 carries for 7 yards against Jacksonville. And that's just not going to cut it. You can't be tentative. You gotta be decisive. You gotta put your foot in the ground and cut through the hole. And he just wasn't doing that.
So one other thing that I'll point to, and then I'll let you go. Our offensive line is now fully healthy for the first time this year with Posick at center. So you got Lewis at left guard, Posick at center. I would like to see that unit, I would like to see that unit work together for the first time this year and kind of figure out how it all kind of comes together. So share your thoughts. Where are you at with that?
I mean, it's hard to say too much because it was Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville's actually got a couple of good defensive tackles that are talented and they get the job done, but there's just not a lot around them. But having Posick in there did seem to help the line. It just seemed like there were a lot fewer missed blocks. Geno had a lot of time. He was able to just sit back and wait for the routes to develop. They still gave up a couple of sacks and there were some problems, but it really seemed to be a stabilizing force for the line to have Posick in there. And I mean, he's not a great center. He's not a Pro Bowl guy, but he is a guy that is smart. He knows the protections. He knows all of that. So he's going to be able to make the right line calls and do the things technically. He'll get to the second level more consistently than Fuller ever did. So there's a lot to like there, but you're still upgrading from awful to average. You're not upgrading to a guy that's, good. And so we'll see. He's also got to stay healthy. We'll see if he can manage that, because that's been a problem his entire career.
So how about that question I just put up?
8-1 or 7-2. I can't go 6-3.
Well, let's talk about it.
Because if they go 6-3, that leaves them at 9-8.
You said that for the two weeks in a row that they would not make the playoffs if they had that record.
And at 6-3, they don't make the playoffs. They're one of the last teams out looking in.
So, will they make the playoffs? Well, when we asked the same question last week, will the Seahawks make the playoffs?
I think they do with the 7-2 record, but they've got to take at least one of these two. That coming up.
Because if they drop 2, they've lost all the momentum. Russell Wilson comes back. Chris Carson's back. Eskridge is back, and they drop 2.
Yep. Then you got to win. You got to win 7 in a row.
Win out, and that just seems so unrealistic to me.
Yep. And so I like the idea, if they can take one of these, that gives them a little bit of margin for error, whether it be against the Rams.
What if they take both of these?
If they take both of these, then your idea that they could go 8-1 out the stretch actually comes into play. It really does. If they can go beat Green Bay and Arizona, now it's not necessarily out of the question. We have to wait and see if I almost said Brett Favre, if Aaron Rodgers can actually test negative, because people just assume that he had to take a week off because it was positive test, that he'll be back this week, but he has to have 2 negative tests. And so when
you have COVID, you still have COVID after a week. I mean, it's going to be right there, I think.
So he's going to be, they're going to be looking at Thursday, not knowing who's going to play quarterback. And then, hoping that he tests negative. And if he doesn't, he can't be with the team. He can't practice. He can't be in the building. So he's just not involved. He's not part of the game plan. He's not getting any of that. And if he does test negative on Thursday, he may be coming into meetings Thursday afternoon after missing Thursday's practice with one practice in the week.
Garofalo and Scheffler are saying that they can't make a final decision on this until Saturday. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with timing or anything like that.
That might be.
But they're saying Saturday is the day that they will find out whether or not he can go or not, which means that he's not practicing or anything
or doing any of the meetings.
Through Saturday, he's going to show up. He's going to show up having done everything virtual.
Yep.
And show up and play. Now, if there's a player capable, he's one of them.
Yeah.
But it's a big game. It's bigger it's bigger for the Seahawks than it is for Green Bay, but Green Bay just fell to 7-2.
And looked really bad doing it. I mean, their defense looked fantastic shutting down Patrick Mahomes and company. Because even though the Chiefs aren't playing great in terms of the record, the offense was still clicking. It was actually averaging more points, more yards than they were during their 2 Super Bowl years. It's just that the defense has been significantly worse. And that's why they keep losing. And the turnovers.
But Jordan Love's not going to get it done, at least not this year.
So, but their defense looked legit, but the offense was terrible. That's the Jordan Love led team with Russell Wilson back, and able to get, he's going to execute a couple drives and get some points, and that becomes the forecast
for Russell Wilson's finger is low 30s, snow flurries early, 50% chance, 25% chance of snow at game time. So it's basically just like you would expect for a mid-November tundra experience. So it'll be interesting. I mean, that alone, the cold ball and those footballs get really hard in the cold, therefore becoming harder to throw at any distance. Now you can still throw it at velocity, and Russell Wilson does have 10-inch hands, so he can get it. He can still have that grip. So I don't anticipate like fumble issues or anything like that with Russell, but but throwing the long ball, especially in the second half of this game, could be a factor.
Well, I don't know about that because Wilson's long ball is such a touch throw. It's the guy, he just floats that ball, those moonshots. And that's,
so maybe the wind would be a bigger factor. I don't know.
See, that's the thing is if the wind is bad, it really makes those throws harder. It's not so much the cold and the hard ball. If he threw a more traditional long ball, then that's when it's more concerning. But his weird, floaty long balls that are just so well placed, typically,
Yes.
I'm not concerned as far as the cold. What I'm concerned about is the wind. That's when that's going to be the problem. So if the wind isn't bad, I'm expecting.
I do
Wilson
like having Chris Carson's and Collins in there as being kind of a battering ram. I think that's actually, God, if we can blend that and eat up some clock and all that stuff, and our defense plays as well as it's been playing against a better offense. If Rodgers comes back, it would turn the season for me if we came out of Lambeau with a win. I'm telling you, everyone, the whole psychology of the fan base and the team would shift to something where anything's possible now.
Well, yeah, because it's like, okay, you lose 3 in a row and then get a win, but that was your time. We went 1-3 without Wilson, and then Wilson comes back and you go out and beat Green Bay, who is viewed as one of the contenders to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, and it would speak to, the team is better than its record because now it's got Wilson back.
The other thing to keep in mind, and this is no small thing, but you also damage Green Bay. You send them to 7-3, and you reduce the chance that you have to go to Lambeau Field in January in the playoffs. And so that's got to be a factor. I don't think you need any more motivation in this game. Russell Wilson's probably just been completely unable to sleep for like 3 days, just anticipating getting back. And I just have a feeling it's early in the week and a lot of stuff can happen, including the Odell Beckham thing. But there's just a feeling that I have where it just, happens once in a while where I just feel like this team's just about ready to kind of take this step. It's one of those Pete Carroll things. Pete gets admonished and so forth here and there all over the place. But one of the things that he's very good at is getting his teams ready to play and finish in November and December. And he's got one of the best records overall in the last 10 years in those months. And Russell Wilson's a big factor in that. Goes and knows how to win games. To have that quarterback back now, when you need to go either 8-1 or 7-2 to get in the playoffs, there's no better quarterback that I would like to have than Russell Wilson to do that. So have I convinced you at all to shift slightly towards being optimistic that maybe this could happen?
I honestly think that the more likely scenario for this team is that they go 6-3 and just miss.
Statistically, you're right. Statistically, they are only at 23%. And that's the optimistic analytics that I saw to make the playoffs. Another one had them at 17.7 or something like that. Yeah, I mean,
it's what it is it's just they with no margin for error.
No margin for error. That is correct.
When they have to play the Rams again. And, that's a tough game for them. I mean, it's not. The Rams are a good team, and they just
Arizona twice. Now the second one might be, a gimme game because Arizona might have it all tied up by then. But nonetheless, Arizona still twice. Green Bay, you got to play, the 49ers again. There's a lot that needs to happen, obviously. And any one of those teams that we play on any given Sunday can disrupt whatever agenda you have on getting to 8-1 or whatever it is, because those teams still want to go out and play well, and so anything can happen. So, but I'm optimistic. I'm still optimistic, even though we're sitting at 3-5, and it's a towering kind of agenda ahead. I mean, to finish 8-1 or 7-2 after a 3-5 start. Anybody that says that out loud is crazy. Like, that's just crazy. But there are so many different things lined up.
Yep, including an easier schedule. I say if they go 7-2 and make the playoffs after starting 3-5 and not having Wilson for that stretch where they had 3 state games where Geno had a chance to take him down and get him a win, and he couldn't do it.
MVP.
I don't know.
If he comes back and takes them 8-1, dude.
Takes it, yeah. I mean, he'll get consideration because you've seen guys like Murray drop back a little bit and have a couple of rough games. So it's not just this clear. There's no, at this point, there's no one just running away with it the way Lamar did a couple of years ago.
Literally.
Yeah. So there's that. So he'll get some consideration, but it's going to be hard to stack up the numbers when you miss 3.5 games. And so everyone's going, well, yeah, but he only had 30 touchdowns, and this other guy. Yeah, but 42.
What did he do? What did he do to affect his team's wins? I mean, that's going to be a big statement. So we'll see. It's yet to be written. I mean, there's just no question. The defense still needs to perform, do their job. Offense still hasn't completely come together yet. We saw glimpses of that last game, but that was, an asterisk game. So we'll see. This is really the next 2 games will tell the tale of how this season's going to go. I truly believe that. So,
yep.
Anything else, my friend?
No, let's get out of here. We're already over our time limit.
Let's go eat some dinner.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah. All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com is your source for all of our shows and all the content that we've ever produced. And you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms, including Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, and you can find us on YouTube and subscribe if you would. That would be awesome. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawk.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.